Welcome to the Dallas Show, the podcast where we made the Dallas Show a podcast. My name is Dallas, and for today's episode, we have another good friend of mine, Ryan Yohe. Yohe, as he's called to most of us that know him, is somebody that I wanted to get on here because we became good friends through our love of trash TV that you'll hear about today, mostly Degrassi, The Next Generation. It's been a pleasure getting to watch those with Yohe, and so today we're going to dive a little bit deeper as to why it is that we love the show so much and what the end should have done to culturally change today. So this is the Dallas Show with Ryan Yohe.
How about I just give you, I'll start with a top three.
Okay.
And this is a polarizing one because they will switch every so often, and you're probably going to wonder why.
Okay.
Number one has to be Manny Santos. Manuela Santos.
Yep.
She went from just being the plucky little adorable cute sidekick, and then all of a sudden she went cuckoo bananas and started leading the world through cheer, videos, Gone Wild, and ultimately,
whale tail.
What's that?
A whale tail for days. All right, Yohe, let's put a pin in that. We'll get to that in a second. Welcome to the Dallas Show, the podcast where we took the Dallas Show and just made it a podcast.
Woo!
Why not?
Yeah.
Today I have a really awesome friend of the podcast. I just told him, Ryan Yohe.
Hey!
Welcome. Welcome to my show. How does it feel?
Oh, man. I have been dreaming about this day.
Welcome to my casting couch.
I am
literally
definitely on the couch right now.
Awesome. So I brought you in today because I know you're an expert on this beautiful little gem that existed in history called The N, which was one of the best TV networks ever in existence. And it's gone now, right?
Yes,
Early
it's gone.
2000s,
Well,
or late 2000s.
So the original network of it. So here's my. I don't have glasses to push up, but it was part of Noggin, which was the original parent network of it, which was one of the sister networks of Nickelodeon, part of the MTV networks.
And what was Teen Nick?
So Teen Nick kind of evolved out of Nickelodeon's SNICK, like Teen Nick programming from
SNICK.
throwing it back to the 90s.
Oof.
And Teen Nick, I believe, evolved from there, where it was still keeping a lot of the programming geared towards teens to upper teens, I guess I'd say. And from there, I think that they wanted to keep it going, but I think Nickelodeon started to skew towards a younger audience, and the N kind of helped take on a little bit of that, like, it took over. Part of Noggin's programming was originally 24/7, just little kid network. And eventually they switched the programming to be just like the morning hours. I think it was 6 a.m. to 5:59 p.m. was all little kid stuff. And then the N took over and started the programming of, again, that teenage, but not quite like preteen, a little bit more towards the teen to late upper teens.
Yeah, it very much felt like is your little sibling in bed because it's time for the almost adult shows to start now. And then it was just whatever it takes. Oh gosh, we'll get into it. I'm gonna jump the gun here. So yeah, we kind of talked about, I was gonna ask you what was the end, and you answered all of that stuff. So do you remember when, and this is such a very specific category that only a few people will appreciate, but I loved the end. Do you remember what show you watched first, or what kind of like got you hooked? Is you not
faux show? It was Daria. That was the one channel that after MTV stopped showing reruns of Daria, that had it at a pretty predominant time period. I think it was like around 11 o'clock at night, and I just happened to be, this will date me, I was at OSU, and I was definitely a very late night owl person. And it was just on that time frame where I was like, all right, cool, Daria's on. Heck yeah, I'm going to watch it. And then that's what gateway led me to Degrassi.
See, the first one I watched was Degrassi, The Next Generation, and I didn't get very far into Degrassi before my parents were actually like, I don't think this is appropriate. And I was like, but it's people my age going through real things. It goes there, Mom. And she was like, that's not appropriate. So
Did she say Dallas does not goes there?
Yeah, it does not. And yeah, she was like, that she kind of nixed it. So I didn't really I didn't really watch anything. I could like sneak Degrassi in and be like, what's the gang up to this time? And it was like, you would miss one episode and everything would just be like, what is going on? There's new haircuts. There's this person's gay now, but now they're back. This person is dead almost. I'm confused. Who is this character? So
wait, before you go, what episode was it that your mom saw and was like, oh hell no, you are not allowed?
I don't think, and it wasn't really like a, oh hell no, this is inappropriate. I think it was a lot of the Marco episodes where it was like, this is kind of weird. We're uncomfortable. I'm saying we're uncomfortable. And I was like, okay. But yeah, it was a lot. But then, I mean, there were episodes like looking back when, if I was only 14 or 15 and it was like, oh, that girl's doing ecstasy. What is ecstasy? Where do I get ecstasy when I'm 14?
Right.
It goes there. Degrassi goes there. So that kind of leads into the next thing. So we talked about there were 3 shows that we kind of went back and forth that were really important to the end. And the first one I want to talk about because we'll get into Degrassi.
Oh, of course.
But the first one is South of Nowhere.
Oh,
and
classic.
I remember hearing the really dramatic like interstitials between shows being like, and now South of Nowhere, and it was like, I don't know what this is, and I never got into it, but I watched the first 3 episodes I think in preparation for this podcast, and it was wild. It was like it was like Degrassi in California. But it was interesting that it deals with lesbian relationships, because I don't feel like a lot of shows did lesbian relationships. It was mostly gay male relationships where it was like, that's the gay character. It didn't do a lot of, at least in that time, in my opinion, didn't really do a lot of like female gay characters. So it was interesting that it took that approach on doing that.
And one thing that was really interesting about it as well was not only did it portray a story about like an LGBTQ plus story, but it also engaged a female character, like you mentioned, that doesn't necessarily fall within a lot of those like lesbian tropes. Very, very attractive. Everyone assumes immediately straight.
Yeah.
She assumes that she's straight. She meets Ashley.
It's always the Ashleys.
It is the Ashleys. But she develops a bond or a friendship with her that truly makes her question and try to figure out, like, okay, is it okay to have this really close bond if everyone's saying that now I'm a lesbian, I'm a dyke, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And then she realized that she had deep feelings for her. And Mama Carlin was not thrilled with that. You saw 3 episodes. You know how tight she runs that ship.
Oh, that show was wild. The other thing that was interesting about that show was I forget the black character's name. It's her
Not
brother.
Spencer. Oh, what's Spencer? Yeah.
There's a Spencer in that too.
That's her name. That's
the main girl's name.
Yeah, that's Gabrielle Christian's character's name.
I was thinking her name was Gabrielle. That's her actual name. There's a Spencer and an Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that makes it even weirder. Weren't Spencer and Ashley together in Degrassi at some point? They were all together at some point. I don't know.
Oh, Internet's not being kind to me. As I pull up the cast listing, it shows all the white characters. Google.
We just had to talk about this on this other episode with Duncan.
Donzo Gordon's name was Clay. The adopted brother.
So yeah, it was. They didn't touch a lot on that right out the gate too, which was interesting because they moved from. They don't say anywhere. They say small town Ohio, right?
Yep.
Is it anywhere specific? I don't remember it being anywhere specific.
I think they make some references to like almost eastern Ohio because I think they mentioned stuff about Pittsburgh, which of course
the
is
fun
kind of
parts
the
of
gateway.
Ohio. We just lost the Eastern Ohio section for the podcast we're at. Sorry, them and we lost Tara Reid also. First episode, it was bad.
What a shame.
But I thought it was interesting. So when they set it up, and he's an adoptive brother, they don't really talk about it a lot. So you're like, okay, he's a brother, but he also his whole storyline, at least in those first couple episodes, it's hard to be black in California, or harder to be. It's different being black in California than being black in Ohio, which I thought was another interesting kind of way to frame that.
Yeah, you'll if you do pick up the series, I watched all of it.
Okay.
If you do pick up the series, it does, his storylines definitely delve a lot into the identity crisis, like you're mentioning, of like he came from an area that is way different from California, and ultimately the friends that he bonds with help him establish and figure out more about who he is as a person versus who he was. And especially they kind of play with that whole trope of when people like to misnomer African Americans and say like, oh, you act white, you talk white. And it was one of those things that I don't think it really reached too much new territory and kind of helped make things less of an assumption, but it at least talked about it and tackled it from at least a superficial level.
Yeah. So it was interesting that it kind of dealt with race in that way, which even like to the best of my knowledge in Degrassi didn't handle race that way. But to also deal, so it's got like the race aspect, but then it also has like the female LGBTQ plus faction of it. It's a really interesting dynamic. And then they throw them in like California, like the exact opposite of where they came from. So I just thought it was a really interesting, again, because I'd never seen it. So just kind of diving into the first few episodes, because it's on for, it's what, 3 seasons?
3 seasons long. The first 2 are very much like a pretty powerful story, or at least it builds to a lot of things. It ended, well, how spoiler do you feel about this?
I mean, I looked it all up on Wikipedia.
Okay, cool. So season 2, Clay gets shot. That's like the big thing. Clay gets shot, and then also I believe it's either Spencer is like missing or has a thing, because it's a shooting at the prom is what really brings this whole big thing. So it's like a rival gang issue that happens. Clay gets shot. We don't know what happened to him, and the big opener for season 3 is he dies. But one of the reasons why they chose that route was he actually opted out of the show. And get this, do you know why he opted out of the show?
Of course I don't. Tell me everything.
It's because he did not agree with the storyline that Spencer was getting. He did not approve of the LGBTQ plus aspects that the show was delving into. He had very strong, I believe it was religious beliefs that, so rather than that, let him say like, nope, let's dictate the storyline. Let's kind of cut the whole Spencer, Ashley, and all of the other girlfriends, friends, etc. that are part of their story. And they said, nah. And he said, okay, I'm out. So they killed him.
I mean, that doesn't, but that's a show within itself on this network. They could have done that.
Also, there was another brother in the family that really, Glenn.
Was he the basketball one?
Yep. His story just tanked.
I don't really remember much about him, except I was like, your brother's hot. And she's like, thank you.
Yeah, he was just the golden boy that kind of went down a bad path. And I mean, he did kind of have a little bit of he had an injury, started relying on medication, started getting addicted, and that route, which is something that now by this time a lot of shows and a lot of things have kind of talking about the opioid crisis that happens and can happen with teenagers or even younger. But ultimately, just his stories never really engaged me that much. I was all into Spencer. One of the later episodes, she marches in the Pride Parade, which her mom is like, nope, you're basically not quite out of my life, but just nah, I'm not into it. And her father goes to support her, and I cried when I saw it, because he eventually basically forced the mother and said, like, this is your daughter. This is your last chance to actually have a bond with her. If you don't want it, you're out of her life. And she supported her ultimately. Albeit forced.
Moms and dads doing good things. So kind of moving from, we're going to move into the more reality show aspect. So this, again, I love talking to you about this because you remember all these shows, and I keep feeling like I keep seeing all of my guests are older than I am, but you guys are just old enough that you guys were like right in the middle of what I was picking up. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff that I remember, but then when I talk to you or like with Nick, it's like you're like, no, I lived it. I was there. I know it.
I was there.
But the other show that I remember, I don't remember watching it, but I just remember it being on all the time, was BVG, or Boys vs. Girls, and how there was like Boys vs. Girls, Hawaii, and then it was like, what was it? Like North Dakota or Montana? It was like,
I think it was Montana.
Out of left field. Why Montana? And then I think the other one was like South. It was Southern. But
I remember Hawaii moderately vivid. Okay, so there were 3 seasons of Girls versus Boys.
And then there was one where it was Lauren Collins and
Jake Epstein.
Yes. They were in the cast, right? Like they were also competing.
Yeah, they joined.
It's like
I was so jealous of the boys team and the girls team, to be fair. Whenever they joined, I think that was the one season that I was able to see. Oh, there were 4 seasons. Wikipedia and Google are fighting here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was the one.
3 too many. But
I think that was the first. Oh, there was a Puerto Rico season.
Puerto Rico. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
First game Tampa, second game Hawaii, third one Montana.
Montana.
And 4th season was Puerto Rico.
Wow, they got real exotic with that last one.
Yeah, and apparently the last. Maybe I'm thinking of the third. Whichever one Shoot, that was Hawaii.
That Hawaii?
Yeah, that was season 2. 4th one, apparently they changed the format. It was 4 girls, 4 guys, but they weren't opposite against each other. It was 3 girls and a guy versus 1 girl and 3 guys.
Well, and I don't remember. Was it like Survivor? Like, did people get kicked off, or did they just get points?
There was voting involved. I do recall.
And you had to be like, what, 14 to audition? Like it was
16 to 18.
I was saying, looking back, like they were pretty young to be like, we're reality stars.
Yeah. Did you ever see, or do you recall the show? It was on NBC, I think, at first, called Endurance, which was like the preteen version.
Yeah.
So it was weird because it kind of fell into this echelon of like Endurance was NBC's, then became Discovery Channel, I believe. And then you had Girls versus Boys, which was the teenage one. And then you have MTV's The Challenge, which is everything plus 18.
Yeah, it was bizarre, but the only thing, and we were talking about this, the only thing that I remember is that whoever won BVG, whatever, the person who announced it always said they'd win a gift card to Aeropostale. And I didn't know what that meant for a really long time, but it's Aeropostale. Do they call it different things, different places?
I've heard it called
in the United
both.
States.
I've definitely heard it called both, and I've had friends that worked there in high school, and I cannot.
Are you still friends with those people?
Ooh, am I? Probably not.
I have 14. Like Aeropostale, that's a bit much.
Aeropostale.
Aeropostale. I don't know.
And
at
you got
Aeropostale.
Postale.
Let us know. I see. That's the other, but like that was also right in the area where I was like, if I could get Aeropostale. I grew up lower middle class, so it was like Aeropostale and American Eagle were like, oh, who is she? What is she doing? And then it was like, oh, I can walk by a Hollister or an Abercrombie, but like I dare not go inside. But yeah, so when it was like $50 to Aeropostale, I was like, 1, I think you're saying it wrong, but 2, that sounds amazing.
Man, they should have just had celebrities join each season to add like the extra.
They should have just did a Degrassi season.
Oh,
so good. You know what? Let's just make the leap, shall we? Let's get into Degrassi. Let's get into Degrassi: The Next Generation.
Oh,
now,
down for
Yohe.
it. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I know you and I are going to start a podcast called Degrassi: The Next Generation.
Oh, I'm so in.
But you and I, when we found out that we were fans of the show, sat for like a half an hour and just like screamed at each other about this show. And we've spent hours just watching it on YouTube. You should look it up on YouTube.
It's everywhere.
So I want to ask you before I go into it, what's your connection to Degrassi? Why do you love it so much?
So again, kind of picking back to originally when I mentioned how Daria was my gateway into the N, and I just saw a bunch of bumpers and like little cast interviews and things with Degrassi, and I've typically been someone that kind of obsesses or falls into teen dramas, teen comedies, just that teen era I never really ever got out of ever. And Degrassi was that new version that I was able to see. I think when I first started watching was probably the end of season 2. I had just finished filming, and then I actually live time waited for season 3 to happen, and I think I was 20s, early 20s at that point. I was like, I shouldn't be watching this, but I'm gonna.
At night, under the shroud of darkness, a TV is on, and whatever it takes, you'll make it through.
And I had college roommates that were like, "What the hell are you watching?" I was like, Degrassi.
I was gonna say, were you the one that was like, "Don't worry about it," or were you like, "Can I show you something?"
No, I didn't have roommates that were cool enough, I should say, that would have appreciated everything. So I just, under the shroud of secrecy, or if they were there and like, "Why are you watching teenagers?" I would just kind of look and like,
"Are you watching porn?" And you're like, yes. So good. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what got me so involved in it, but I think I've said it before, I really like ensemble casts. One, if there's a lot of characters and they can focus on a lot of characters, I already like it, because I think, once you do 12 seasons with the same 4 characters, like, what else can you do? But when you have those things, especially when you set it in a middle school where they still have a lot of time to grow up, and then when they're going to the thing where it's like, oh, they're going to start dating each other soon, and you figure out these relationships that are going to work and not work, and oh, the cool kid's with the goth girl, and that's so weird, but it happens. And I feel like there was always this thing growing up where I was like, it does go there. Like, it's so edgy. It knows me. And then like cut to me going to high school in like cornfields. And I'm just like, well, it's a predominantly white school, and there's an agricultural class, and well, I guess my school isn't Degrassi. Never mind. This
do you remember, I think it was the season 5 promos, which, by the way, I will say hands down, Degrassi, The Next Generation in particular, had some bomb-ass just promos for like trailers. They had songs in the later seasons where it was like a narrative of like explaining the whole season in a 3-minute song, things like that. Season 5, I think, is where they really hit this crux, where they had a lot of these just like desolate scenes or just like really empty scenes, and it would be like the school steps, and it would say, this is where they decided to get high today. And then there'd be another shot where it would say like, this is where they made a decision about the baby. And then there's one where you see like the empty pill bottle. It's like, this is where he decided to kill himself. And it's like Degrassi, it goes there, and it was just like heart stopping. I was like what?
Cut to me like playing Halo and being like, wait, Degrassi's on. This is what I need to know what happens next.
Not only that, but there was a point where, so for any folks out there that didn't watch it live time, because Degrassi, The Next Generation, or most incarnations of Degrassi are based in Canada, Canadian broadcasts typically got the episodes a little bit faster than the American folks. And I would go on every possibly illegal torrent ever, and I would just be able to find every episode before it came to the US and would just acquire it through some means of downloading that someone would give to me. I never did it myself. And I would always try to be up on my game as much as possible. And everyone else would be like, oh, I'm waiting 2 months. I'm like, ha, I know what happens.
Joke's on you.
Except then it made it even worse, because then waiting for the next season would take extra long.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Well, and I got through probably 2 seasons before I even realized it was Canadian, which
you must not have. It must not have been the season with Rick.
Well, see, I don't know. Well, no, but it was. I didn't really realize it until I was, because you don't really know it's Canadian until they say sorry.
And there's only, I think, a handful of characters that
and there's like a few of their vols that get a little
money
Canadian.
scenes. Anytime they're handing or touching money, that was another. It was a more subtler.
And you're like,
nod.
I'm sorry, could they not afford real money or prop money? They're using literal Monopoly dollars. And it's like, no, that's Canadian currency.
Because that was, I think, one of the first couple episodes. Yeah. The family politics one where someone tried to bribe someone out of an election. That money went flying out and was like, oh, that ain't Monopoly money.
Wrong here. And even some of like the products they use, like some of the snacks, sometimes it's
Kraft
like,
dinner. It's not Kraft mac and cheese. It's Kraft dinner.
What is Kraft dinner? Oh, so good. So we talked a little bit about this. So Manny is like your number one, right?
Manny's my. So I would have to say out of a top three. And this is, so what, oh God. So I've seen most of the incarnations of Degrassi, except for, so history lesson here. It started as The Kids of Degrassi Street in 1979 and released, I think it was like episodic per year, where it had these little 4 mini movies that started the whole franchise after they ended. It was like 79, and I think maybe 80 and 81. And then it fed into Degrassi Junior High, which then evolved into Degrassi High after it took a hiatus.
Hey.
Then the Next Generation was the next one. So, and then after the Next Generation ended with Next Class. Well, as of yet, I'd love to see another incarnation. But beside that, so there, I kind of have a bunch of different tiers for each of the ones, but I'm guessing for most of our chat, we're going to be really diving into like the next generation of everything.
It's so good.
I'll give you my top 3 for the Next Generation, and we'll just call it a draw from there. So, almost jumped ahead to my other one. So Manny Santos, Manuela, went from being a plucky sidekick and basically was the hot friend who delved into a bunch of storylines that kind of played off that superficiality and then actually established a bit more depth to her. Not necessarily too much, but she always found a way to ingrain herself in other storylines or be pivotal or have connections to other characters so she would still at least stay relevant. And eventually, after kind of hitting a bunch of superficial spots, realizes her own inner depth and kind of starts bringing that out more. And the writing kind of got a little hacky at times for her, and she did the best that she could. There was a little bit of a drought around season 6 or 7 where writing got a little tight in a few spots. But Manny was just one that was always enjoyable to watch. And I think that's what really kind of stuck me to her. Even if I didn't care for the decisions she made, she was always enjoyable to watch. On the other hand, Ashley, that's right, I said it. I'm probably one of the... No, I can't be one of the only people out there that loved Ashley.
Ashley overall or very specific Ashleys? There's like 7 of them.
Ashley Kerwin. She has a very special spot in my heart because she was, I think when I first got into Degrassi, a lot of her really serious storylines were hitting because she was kind of one of the heavy hitters for the first couple seasons, where she was the one that did E, and she was the straight-laced goody good girl, and I was like, oh my God, that's so me. I was the Ashley.
She went from 0 to 100.
She did.
Where it was like, because you kind of run into these things where it's like, what's this character's thing? And hers was just like, I'm too perfect. And it's like, okay, kind of boring, but then and then she all of a sudden is like, I'm doing ecstasy. And it was like, whoa. She calls Paige a hag.
Yeah, the hag. She makes out with Sean, even though she's still kind of with Jimmy at that point.
Oh, the denim dreamboat.
She blew up that entire party.
God, so good. Okay, so Manny, Ashley.
I'm going to say Spinner. Spinner is my number 3. Again, just like kind of adult at spots. And when I say spots, I mean a lot of the show he was in. But ultimately, he was, again, like kind of an anchor feature that did a bunch of dumb shit, but learned sometimes from it. Again, was enjoyable enough that he was lovable. Yeah. And he had a lot of relationships where he was shitty at first, but then moved forward out of those and showed that he actually had a lot of depth that came from him. Where, for example, when he found the Lord, and
we've known where he's been this entire time. I don't know where he was looking.
Tried to make amends with some things that he had regarding a shooting from a season previous, and realized that he was, first of all, kind of looking to religion as some inspiration to kind of get through a dark spot, and was kind of leaning on his soon-to-be girlfriend Darcy in a spot where he was almost kind of doing it for a slightly wrong reason, and then other folks kind of helped him realize that, okay, like you do need to get over this, you need to get through this, and if you're using religion to do that, awesome. Just remember though, like, don't do it for just a girl, do it for you. And then he lost a testicle to cancer.
Yep. I remember that because that was another one where it's like, what are they going to do with Spinner? Oh crap.
He also didn't get into cop college, which was a sad day.
Oh, Canada. You're missing out.
All right, Dallas, who are your 3?
All right. So I know I talk a lot of shit about this character.
Oh boy.
But my favorite character is Giddy Up Emma. Old horseface herself, Emma. Mm-hmm. Emma Nelson, right? That's her name.
Mm-hmm.
Their last name.
She didn't change it to Simpson when her mom remarried. That was a thing. Remember?
See, I hate her, but every episode where she's throwing a tantrum, it's so funny and spectacular.
Oh, she was.
And she was a nightmare person. Like, episode 1, child predator. Like, she gets almost attacked by a guy who pretends to be her. And so from there, it's like, oh, she's the main, air quotes, main character because her mom was the one in Degrassi Junior High and stuff. But as soon as like that's a hell of a pilot to be like, oh, by the way, this is a grown man trying to prey on you. But then everything that she kind of does is just so over the top and ridiculous, and like her protesting and
rebel.
She's such a rebel, but then she gets gonorrhea. Mm-hmm. She gets gonorrhea, right?
Yep.
She gets gonorrhea. Like, she's impeccable.
She was definitely one of the folks that had the largest kind of survivor guilt change in her dynamic of her character, and that was towards the Next Generation. That was around season 4 after Rick and his infamous
spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, lots of spoilers. Hope you've seen these.
My second favorite character, I was gonna say Manny, for most of the same reasons. She's always there, and she's always incredible. Like when she just stops wearing underwear to school. So good. It's so good. It's so problematic and stupid.
She put the phrase cuckoo bananas on the map.
Yeah, she did. And I didn't even know, because I didn't sneaky Canadian torrent things. Like, her abortion episode didn't even air here.
Nope.
And they don't really talk, like, it's kind of a self-contained episode, if I remember right. They don't really mention it a ton.
No, there's only 1 or 2 episodes that allude to it, because she mentions about people talking about her over some things. Yeah,
but I mean, it's a very self-contained, so they were very much like, this is something that happened to her, and we're moving on to other things, because I mean, it's a pretty big episode.
Canada didn't pull no punches.
They didn't
baby.
Give a shit.
No, they were like, it goes there.
Free
US is like,
healthcare.
nah, it doesn't go there here.
Like, not here. It doesn't go there here. That's the show. My third favorite character, she's not in it very long, but Terry.
Oh,
I love Terry. She gets rickrolled right into that rock. Spoilers.
But you know that she actively chose to leave Degrassi for her modeling career, which was I feel like Degrassi builds some characters up, and then the actors just leave to do the dream.
Like, I can do that for real. I'm gonna do that.
Terry's like, plus size modeling, done. She leaves, becomes a successful plus size model.
Yeah.
Jimmy is like, I'm gonna start rapping. Starts rapping. Yep. Drake, boom, he gone.
See ya. And then you have Sean, who, what's he do now? Politics?
Yeah,
he's a pretty big politics person.
He went overseas to Afghanistan and then came back a correspondent.
You know, it goes there, and then Sean goes there. I can't even tell you his real name. But yeah, so mine, Emma, Manny, Terry, so good, and because she leaves after what, the third season.
Terry is out after season 3 with like a guest appearance in. Well, no, she is.
I was gonna say once they're like she's in a coma, she gets never
taken
comes
out
back,
and then they visit her in the hospital, and then that's it. She gets one thing after they give her that gigantic card.
Oh my god! Is this card loud enough to get you out of that coma, Terry? No, it's not.
It was like the size of a wall. Like, we made this for you, this card.
And I also remember that episode specifically being like, oh, like Terry's going to be gone because she probably won't be the same if she does come back. But then I was like, that means like Rick will never be back either. How could they? And lo and behold, here steps out Rick at age 35 trying to be a high schooler.
I think he was like 20 or 21, whatever he was on that show.
Because a lot of the actors, I feel like, were pretty close.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job.
And then there were like the one or two where it was like, okay, sir, maybe this is weird. You're a lot older. So before we could talk again, find us on Degrassi The Next Generation.
It's coming. It's coming.
It has
folks.
to happen. You can also check out, I just closed it. My blog. I have a blog on Degrassi called Whatever It Literally Takes. And it's at whateverittakes0829.wordpress.com because I haven't paid for a domain name in a while. So
bookmark it.
Recommend checking it out. It did go international on Reddit. Somebody did throw some shots at me. And I stand by my fact that Emma looked like a horse for the first 3 seasons. And
we had some people rally behind and say that the people that said we were worse than Boycott the Calf, they're like, actually, no, they're not.
Yeah. Boycott the Calf, 10 out of 10 would not recommend.
It's funny until it's not. It's funny until you go, oh, why did you say that?
Funny till it's problematic. 2020.
True.
Yoey, are there any other shows that we didn't really talk about that are worth mentioning?
Oh, I compiled a list. I won't go too far into each of these, but I will touch very slightly because these were all very pivotal to my time on the end and beyond.
You have 10 seconds for each one.
Okay. Instant Star. Oh, my God. Canada.
I forgot about Instant Star.
Girl. Jude Harrison. She was in a bunch of other stuff. Alex Johnson. You need to find her, find the show. It was great. Next show, Beyond the Break, Surfer Girls. Do you remember?
I remember the show, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Surfer Girls, drama, kind of. I don't think it ended. I think it ended abruptly because they got canceled.
Wasaga Beach?
Not Wasaga Beach.
Oh
no, they were.
Could you imagine a Degrassi crossover? Sean
comes flying by in his jet ski.
Just hits a kid with a surfboard, and that's how he beat up that kid.
Okay, next one, Radio Free Roscoe. Come on, you had to have.
No.
God, I can't think of the. I can hear the theme song in my head.
Is this a cartoon or like
Nope.
a real show?
It was a real show.
Radio Free Roscoe?
Yep. It was high school kids that had an independent radio station that they spoke their mind.
First red
Lots
flag.
of Canadian acting gems. One throwback to Degrassi, the Purple Dragon campaign where Emma took off her dress. The main model, the lead one that was like the mean one to her, she was a main star in Radio Free Roscoe. Then Griffin, the guy that Paige dated, was also a main character. Also, the guy that made fun of Terry for being a plus-size model was also a main character of Radio Free Roscoe.
Yoey, did you work at the inn? Were you an intern? An intern? Did they call them interns?
Oh, I
Is
hope
that problematic?
they did. And also, come on, we got one of the last big main actually 2 other basically everyone that showed up as a guest star in Degrassi was a main character in Radio Free Roscoe. The next show, The Best Years. Oh, it was a dramatic AF. At least the first season was pretty hard hitting. Girl starts college. She's poor. She has a scholarship. Rich relative, spoiler alert, but figurehead helps her stay alive. And also Paige, the actress that plays Paige, guest stars as the rich benefactor's daughter or niece or something. And then it got kind of not drivelly. It got very lighthearted for the second season. Then it got canceled. Blah.
Boo.
O'Grady. Do you remember O'Grady?
That was one of the ones I was going to talk about. I remember watching that one,
cool
but I didn't get super into it.
That was oh god, Osborne. What's her name? She sang the theme song for it. Not Sharon.
Kelly?
Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Kelly Osborne sang the theme song for O'Grady.
Nice.
Queen Bees, another reality show that was hosted by Joanna Hall of America's Next Top Model, season 2 winner. Sorry, Joanna House. My bad. Yeah, she was the host for it. It was a bunch of
Joanna House.
Mm-hmm,
That's a drag name if I've ever heard it. Welcome to the stage. You want a house? Yes, I do.
And this was about stuck-up, privileged girls that were getting a lesson in humility, grace, all these things because they got nominated by their friends and loved ones because they thought they sucked.
Could you imagine if it's like, why are you here? My mom hates me.
That's basically it. Or like boyfriends were saying like, yeah, if she doesn't get any better, I want out and she's a terrible person. Stassi. Are you familiar with Stassi from, the canceled Stassi, I should say, from, she was in Vanderpump Rules.
Yes.
She was on Queen Bees. She was a Queen Bee.
She was.
Yeah.
Do you win if you
reform if you reform the most, you get a monetary prize and this whole big title ceremony, etc.
Yeah.
There's also a show
air quotes from the corner.
Truth. About a Boy was also a show that the only reason I paid attention to it was because the main character was
a boy.
Nope, it was not. Actually, oh, shit. It was not about a boy. It's called About a Girl. Whoops. It's about someone else. She was the main character. She was, a supporting main character. Oh, boy. About a Girl. Main character was a supporting character on another Canadian teen soap drama, Edgemont. Did you watch Edgemont?
That sounds like the name of a porno.
Edgemont was, I think it was early 2000s. It was definitely Canadian television at its finest. And I think it actually showed up on the N at some point. Or at least the internet tells me, and I don't believe it. But Edgemont might not be the N, but highly recommended. Last show, this was another port from the WB, What I Like About You.
That was Amanda Bynes, yeah?
Yup, Jenny Garth, Amanda Bynes.
Yeah.
They were pretty heavily
Rex,
shown on the N.
What's his face?
Yeah.
Is his name Rex? His name's Rex.
Yep, you're right. He was in the first season.
He's from Scary Movie 3.
And then he gone.
Yeah. I didn't know that was in that.
It was in, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was good. I watched that one.
I'm pretty sure I watched What I Like About You at 4 a.m. many, many nights in college.
So I liked that one a lot. It's probably problematic now.
Amanda Bynes' best work changed my mind.
Have you seen Hairspray? I'm just kidding. So kind of wrapping up. So why do you think the end stuck with you, and why do you think networks like this that put out this kind of content are important for kids at these ages? Because like we kind of talked about, the end did a lot of stuff that was kind of not kids and it wasn't adults, but it was like two high schoolers. Especially, I mean, I grew up in the like late 90s, 2000s is when I started becoming a teenager. And like some of the stuff they did in that area really kind of hit home. So why do you think networks like that are important for generations like that?
I think you actually answered a lot of it, just kind of showing your example. It was that realm for the kids that kind of outgrew Nickelodeon, because originally, like the early 90s, Nickelodeon was still hitting to a lot of that teenage fan base, teenage to late teen, but still having enough younger kid stuff. And then they just kind of shifted way younger, and then that niche market was missing because it was MTV on one side, Nickelodeon on the other, and nothing really in the middle to bridge the gap. And that's where the N came in to provide that, not just scripted shows that still fed to late teens, early 20s, but also like reality programming. Girls versus Boys. Yeah. That was one that had that, again, showing kids younger to middle to even later teen kids, like that you still have this spot in this market where you can still see kids your age or even slightly older, and you can kind of say like, oh, this is what it's going to be like, even though it's not always that way. But at least it portrays a lot of those stories, and that's something that really, that's why it stuck with me so long. Was I thought it was really neat because I felt like I missed out on a few of those spots for later teens when I was a late teen, although I was definitely one that watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch all the time as a teenager.
Shane agrees.
It was phenomenal. But
well, and because I was talking to, when I talked to Duncan about like how important TV and stuff can be, like binge watching now, which again, binge watching is relatively new, which is still crazy to me.
Yeah.
But like being able to watch those things now and kind of relive that, it's TV and streaming are like really easy ways to get points across while creating art and doing stuff. So I think it's, if people do it correctly and do it in the right way, like you can reach a lot of people and say something really important. And I think even though Degrassi is a little melodramatic with like how things are, where it's, you know, very set up, like this character's doing this thing, and it's kind of ramped up, I feel like for TV, there's a lot of stuff that people could relate to. You know, maybe it wasn't, people were doing ecstasy when you were 14, but you knew you had an older sibling, or you had somebody else who was doing that stuff. Ellie was another one of my favorite characters, like her, like snapping herself with a rubber band. I remember kids in middle school and high school doing that and not knowing what was going on. So even seeing that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, okay, it might be a little ramped up, but it's, you know, these experiences are coming from somewhere.
There's one that's and again, this will be for the next podcast, coming to a place near you. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, like storylines, that because Degrassi Canada based, I feel like Canada was more candid, more open to telling a lot of these things that a lot of U.S. networks were really maybe averse, more than just saying like, we won't do it, but like, we'll wait for someone else to do it and then we'll chime in. But Degrassi Next Class, which is the one that premiered, which is a Netflix production that took over once Degrassi Teen Nick fizzled out. But there was a character there that she realized that she didn't really identify as much female as originally she thought. And it was a really beautiful moment where they actually realized that it was kind of, they didn't fall within the female spectrum as much, and they didn't really fall in the male spectrum. And it showed this really, really beautiful moment where they got to see themselves in gender neutral clothing and took off their wig. That was a whole thing. Bright red wig, no longer there. And started crying in the mirror, seeing themselves the way that they didn't realize that was the way they wanted to be. And it was something that, yet again, like how dramatic Degrassi can be. They often have these little moments or big moments, in Yael's case, where they're able to really hit home, and the actress who portrayed that character received so much positive feedback from folks. And that's just one example of like you said, Ellie with cutting. That actress also revealed she had a whole bunch of fan mail from folks saying, you helped me identify something in myself. And that's so cool that despite all the soapy melodrama that can happen, a lot of these, like, you'll catch these spots and you'll have people that say, I identify as this.
Yeah. Also, Craig's dad was the scariest person on TV for like a really long time. And I'm sure the guy who played JT got a lot of fan mail that was like, I've also been stabbed.
Yeah.
So thank you for helping me be identified as somebody who got killed off of the show for no reason. Okay. All right, Yohe. To end on a high note. Whatever it takes. We're going to play a little game called Does Dallas Like?
Oh, I'm ready.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rapid fire give you 10 items, and you just have to say yes or no. Does Dallas like these things? Are you ready?
Yes.
He's got it down. All right. First thing, mood rings.
Yeah.
Revolutions.
Yes.
Separation.
Nah.
Bedrooms.
Nah.
Triangles.
Yeah.
Agencies.
Yeah.
Fur.
Yeah.
Frowning.
Yeah.
Division.
Nah.
Scrap metal.
Yeah, not really.
All right, Yohe, thank you so much for being on the Dallas Show. Where can people find you if they want to see anything you do?
Well, I try to do things, but also 2020 has been a thorn in many sides. I'm currently doing stuff for the It's All Been Done theater. It's All Been Done network. If you're super, super interested, you can send me a message. I'm either on Facebook or Instagram, Yohe Says, YOHEEESEZ. And I can give you some more info on the things that I currently do.
Perfect. Yohe, I love talking to you about this, and we'll be talking. We have to talk about it for 7 more years. I could write a dissertation on the Inn and Degrassi, The Next Generation, but that's all I have for today. Yay! Thank you guys for listening. Yeah, go ahead and listen to the Dallas Show. Tell your friends. I know there's so many people listening, but
I literally
we'll catch
tell
you guys.
Everyone on the street.
Right? This whole street of 5 people. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Whoa, what an episode, am I right? This is a thanks for everybody who helped make the Dallas Show and the Dallas Show podcast possible. To all of our backers, thank you very much. Specifically, Kenrick Callahan, thank you so much for everything that you've done to help with Static Copy Island. Thank you for helping produce the Dallas Show. And thank you to, what does this say here? Oh, Dallas, you're welcome. Thank you, you're welcome. Goodbye.